Welcome to Summer School, Club Fantasy's best ball podcast, streaming exclusively on YouTube. So hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications. I am your host, Austin Amandolia, and with me tonight, my co-host, as always, Matt Record. Matt, how are you doing?
Hello. Doing great. Talking best ball. What more could you want?
Yeah, best ball, it's so great. It's so good. So glad we do this. In the guest seat tonight, we have Benny Best Ball. Benny, how are you?
I'm good. Excited to be here. Ready to talk some best ball. Did a couple best ball manias this morning, so just ready to get going.
Good
Oh,
research.
nice. Yeah, exactly. Getting the scouting in. Now, Benny, I have a confession to make. When we referenced you coming onto this show last week, I realized I don't know your last name. Is your last name Best Ball? Like, does that just a thing now? Did you like get your birth certificate changed? Change your name legally to be Benny Best Ball? Because it fits.
Possibility in the future. I mean, if I win best ball mania, much to the dismay of my girlfriend, I'll probably change my last name to Best Ball. But my last name's Israel, so Ben Israel. But definitely Benny Best Ball on the Twitter streets.
Oh yeah, I dig it. Yeah, definitely follow Benny underscore best ball on Twitter. And yeah, I think if you win Best Ball Mania, I think you should also change your middle name to Underdog, and that way you could just like fully lean into the brand and become like a walking rep for Underdog Fantasy. I think that'd be a
I,
good move.
I'll change my first name to that. Goodbye, Benny. I'll be
I feel like
Underdog
you legally
Best
have
Ball.
to. I think. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, if this is your first time watching this show and you're wondering why we call this summer school and you're wondering what best ball is, I encourage you to check out our show last week. You can find it on our YouTube page, Club Fantasy FFL. We went through just the basics of the show and did some basics on what best ball is. But tonight, we are going to be talking about contest selection, which is getting a little bit into the weeds about best ball, but it's important to think strategically about what contest you are entering when you are playing best ball. So we're going to talk about setting a goal, entering tournaments versus sit and goes. We're going to talk a little bit about our favorite contest to enter, and we're going to talk about rake. Which no, we're not talking about raking leaves. We're talking about raking cash and what the apps do with rake and what rake means and why it's important. Just a quick reminder to send in questions. You drop them in the chat. We will answer them in future episodes, or you can tweet at any one of us and we will get to your questions. But we're going to jump right into it now, which is first, what do we mean when we talk about contest selection? And I want to be clear about this that we're primarily referring to selecting contest on sites like Underdog, Fantasy, and DraftKings. This can apply also to other websites, but we're mostly talking about Underdog and DraftKings. So, Matt, we're going to just first off talk about tournaments versus sit and goes. Can you just describe those two, the difference between those two?
Yeah, sure. So obviously the same premises about best ball sort of apply to both, where you draft your big old team, right? And then your most optimized lineup is played every week. But yeah, sit and goes versus tournaments changes things quite a bit. So sit and go, think of that just like your standard sort of league. There's a variety of different sizes of them, but all you got to do is beat those 11 other people. And you just win, right? You the person with the most points at the end of the season, you just win. Tournaments is a lot harder. Typically, they are a lot larger group of people. You have to sort of make the playoffs, and then a certain percentage of the field is cut down every week. It changes your strategy quite a bit because you're no longer just competing against a few other people. You are competing against not actually a billion, but sometimes it feels like a billion other things, and your odds of winning are a lot lower. Usually the amount of money you can win from a tournament is significantly bigger, which we'll talk about later, which is why it's harder to sort of win versus your other ones. But it changes your strategy, I think, quite a bit depending on which type of league you're in.
Yeah, Benny, is there anything you would add to that? Just talking about the differences between tournaments and sit and goes.
So really, with the main difference that I look at, you just need to make sure that there's a playoff shootout for the tournaments, because there are some tournaments that they do offer, not necessarily on Underdog or DraftKings that will be a total point based winner. But the playoff shootout, it makes things really interesting. It really is 4 or 5 separate contests at that point, from the main rounds throughout each round in the playoffs. So, like your great article, you want to really select your teams based on matchups in the playoffs in those settings, more so than a regular sit and go contest.
Yeah. And so when we're talking contest selection, what we're talking about really is which of these types of contest are you going to be joining? Are you going to be placing wagers on tournaments or on sit and goes? A little bit of both. What's the mix between the two? And it can apply to other leagues as well. Benny, I believe you mentioned this when we did our best ball mock draft a couple weeks ago, where you apply this to your redraft and dynasty leagues, other best ball leagues. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, it even honestly expands to more so a gambling budget that I have, because I'm very into picking games as well. Do weekly pick 'em contests and even bet on the lines individually. So that, I would say, that's a little more where I'm able to gradually build up my bankroll for best ball tournaments, which I mainly play. Dynasty leagues do a good job in that as well, with my portfolio that I have, but really it's just a general gambling bankroll that I have personally.
Yeah, exactly. You want to kind of mix and match and kind of do what works best for you and helps you meet your goal, which leads us right into our next segment, which is just talking about setting a goal. So first, I wanted to discuss, why is it even important to set a goal? Benny, let's start with you. Why should you set a goal when playing best ball?
I'm pretty sure everyone that plays best ball likes money, so you don't want to blow all of your money. You want to pay your bills too, but it's all about being responsible and really only extending yourself to the means that you can. Um, I know you typically, Austin, you do typically a lot of sit and goes to build up your bankroll and stuff. That's your goal, to get a return on investment on it. I am more so hunting for $1 million, some life changing money. My ROI comes from my 401k, but I'm really hunting for that million. So
Yeah, I love that, Benny. The way you framed that too, of like, I'm not getting my ROI in life from best
yeah.
ball. I'm getting it from elsewhere. But for best ball, yeah, I'm going for the $1 million. Matt, what about you? Like, why is it important for you to set a goal?
Yeah, it's just about expectation setting for your own sake. Like, be really honest with yourself of why are you playing in this league, right? So anytime you spend money on a fantasy league, right, it is a gamble, right? So are you trying to earn money back? Are you trying to, like Benny said, win $1 million? Usually for me, my goal is to break even, where I get all the entertainment value, and as long as I break even, we did it. I'm like, not trying to make a whole bunch of money. But the way I like to put it is like, since you are gambling, right? It's just like a $1 scratch off ticket versus, a Powerball ticket. Like, your odds of winning the $1 scratch off ticket is maybe 25% or whatever it is in your state, versus the Powerball is you're not winning, right? You're not doing it, but the chance is there. Like, what if you do? So just being honest with yourself and what you're trying to get out of it, that will just lead to success in pretty much anything in life, but in this case, in best ball.
Yeah, and I think another thing is, whatever your goal is, it's going to define everything you do in contest selection. And that's why we wanted to start with talking about setting a goal, because we're going to talk through all of the different implications of which contest you select based on your goal. So, Matt, you tell us, what is your goal when you play best ball?
Yeah, like I just said, I like having a balance. So yes, I will join a few of those $1 million leagues, because why not? That's fun. Like, it's fun to dream. But I do like winning. So for me, winning a $3, little best ball league, maybe it's not the best ROI, which we'll talk about later. But that's still fun. It's still fun to win. So when I do it, I try to have that nice balance where at the end of it, hopefully you do end up just about breaking even and having a great time doing it.
Yeah, I love that. And Benny, your goal, you said you go after tournaments. I just reiterate that point real quickly, and then we're going to move on.
Yeah, so I'm really going for those top heavy payouts. I do love the 3-person sit and goes. They are a lot of fun, but I think it's more fun right after you draft because everybody has a stacked team and you're like, I got this in the bag. So no, but
Yeah. Well, if you want to talk through how to get an advantage in those 3-person leagues, we're going to talk in a couple of weeks about those because they are important. They are an important way to build your bankroll if that's your goal. And one thing that I want to just highlight when we talk about setting your budget is whatever you do, you need to set up or about setting your goal. When you set a goal, you should also set a budget. And you need to set a budget that is a amount of money you are comfortable losing and saying, this is my hobby and I am just making a statement that I'm probably going to lose it all. And you need to be comfortable with that. Think of it in terms of like other hobbies people have, like house plants, right? This is a joke that my partner and I have about my sports betting habits is she has a house plant hobby and a house plant budget. And so I have a sports betting budget. And so it's just about being sure that when you place that wager, you're comfortable saying, yeah, I'm going to lose that $5, that $50, whatever it is. And I'm still going to be able to pay my bills and live a happy life. So I just wanted to reiterate that point. And then the next thing I wanted to talk about before we really get into talking about different types of contest is scouting yourself, because I think this is related to setting a goal, is scouting yourself. And really, Benny, this came from a point that you mentioned earlier. So this is like about learning from your mistakes, identifying which contests you're better at. So Benny, talk first a little bit about how you scout yourself.
So really at the end of each year, I go look at all of my advancements from all the tournaments I do. And over the past few years, I've been doing this since about like 2019. So the small sample is getting larger of me really blowing these smaller tournaments and advancing pretty well in the bigger tournaments. So that's what I'm gearing towards this year. I'm really just going the larger field, more summer long tournaments that are there, so I can kind of manipulate ADP how I see as I see fit. But really, self scouting is one of the most important things. No one likes to go back and look at their mistakes in any light at any time. But if you're tired of losing money, you really got to look in the mirror and see what you're good at.
Yeah, completely. Matt, do you scout yourself?
Oh, you have to in multiple ways. I mean, the main thing I like looking at is what percentage of certain players I have drafted across leagues. Like everyone has their guys, right? And I find, especially in those very quick drafts, often my team builds have a lot of the same guys in it, which is not typically a success because like, when it works, it's great. When it doesn't, you don't have a whole lot of things to fall back on. So I like to look back on that. And then very similarly, maybe unsurprisingly based on my background, I did a whole lot better in my IDP best ball leagues than I did offense, which, is something to improve on. I need to do a little more research on. But yeah, again, with the goal setting, if I'm trying to be successful, it's like, just maybe put more on the line over there.
Yeah, exactly. And, I was scouting myself earlier today while prepping for this podcast. And, I was looking back at my results last year and some of my teams I drafted. And because, I've been putting down some money on some drafts this year. And I'm like, okay, do I need to slow down? Like, I didn't have a great year last year and I wanted to understand why. And I went and looked and I found a 3-person draft where I drafted 4 quarterbacks. And I was just like, Austin, you would never advise someone to do that now. And so it's just good. It's good to go back and be like, okay, I've learned something. I learned something from my mistakes last year and I'm ready to do better this year. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the balance between tournaments and sit and goes and kind of like how many contests of each you're entering. And the whole point of this is to say, whatever your goal is, that should define how many how many tournament contests you're entering and how many sit and go contests you're entering. So Benny, you're going for the millionaire. And so I assume you're playing basically 100% in tournaments. Is that right?
This year, 95%, let's say. I do a couple fun leagues that are just a typical sit and goes, but just going with that, selecting the tournaments, I really need, this goes back to all of our points we've already made. You got to budget it out, see how many you want to enter. Because if you don't max enter some of those tournaments, you're at a huge disadvantage. So budgeting that out ahead of time and figuring that out before you do start dabbling into it is very important.
Yeah, exactly. Matt, how are you balancing tournaments and sit and goes? You said you're trying to break even. So how do
Yeah,
you make that
I'm
happen?
predominantly sit and go, to be honest. Like I find that more enjoyable for myself. So it's a good thing we have both of us on here. Nice little balance here. You'll be the tiebreaker there, Austin. But yeah, I enjoy the variety of different types of sit and goes. Like that's the variety that gets me going. Like I said, I'm in some IDP only. I'm in some combined. It's fun having a 3-person sit and go because your team is just absolutely stacked, and like you end up with very different builds, obviously, than you do in some of these other leagues. So I try to get it all balanced, but again, predominantly IDP focused leagues.
Yeah, I'm probably more a little bit of an in between of both of you because I enjoy some of the tournaments. Some of the tournaments just turn me off, frankly. I'm just going to be open about that. But I have my fair amount of sit and go leagues that I use to try and break even, right? What I try and do is I have figured out if I enter this many sit and go leagues and let's say I cash in half of them, am I going to break even? Because I think cashing in half of them could be feasible depending on the mix of contest I'm doing. And if that enables me to break even without winning a single tournament, I'm happy. And I think it also frees me up to be more aggressive in tournaments because I just personally, I have a more conservative mindset when I am in fantasy football drafts. And so if I'm like, this is my one chance at a tournament and my one chance to win money, I'm going to be like, not playing risky, which is not the key to success in best ball. So I like to have that balance. We'll talk a little bit more in detail. I mean, my right now I'm aiming at like a 60-40 sit and goes to tournaments. But I think I would like to have a few more sit and goes to kind of balance that out a little bit more. So we've talked tournaments versus sit and goes and the breakdown between those two and the balance between those two. But I want to talk specifically about how do you select which tournaments you want to play in and which sit and goes you want to play in. So we're going to start first with selecting tournaments and just talk about some of the key aspects to be mindful of when choosing a tournament to play in. Benny, let's start with you. We're going to talk about tournament size. What do you have to say about assessing tournament size?
Um, I I look at the payouts first. That's not really the right way to look at it, though. It is important to though look at how many advance from the initial rounds, especially in tournaments, because that can really gauge how you expose yourself to certain players. So you'll hear me say a lot, "Oh, I'm double the field on someone." So in that specific tournament, I'll have about 16% because 1 out of 12 is 8%. So I'll be double the field on them, but it helps me kind of gauge how truly risky I'm going to be because you do want to shoot for upside, but it has to be a calculated upside. You don't want to just keep on taking Jameson Williams because he could pop off in the second half of the year, for an example. Sometimes you want to sprinkle in a more boring, maybe Michael Thomas, who has already produced, but is still risky and suppressed at that ADP as well. But it's important to look at who advances and then the following rounds after that as well.
Yeah, as we mentioned on last week's show, you don't want to be drafting Odell Beckham Jr. in January, February of 2022 when he hasn't re-signed with a team,
No.
and then he just sits out the entire 2022 season, like I did. What a great time, Matt. When you look at tournament size, what are you looking at?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about the, implied odds that you can advance and actually make money, right? So typically the larger the tournament, usually, unless you're, a freak, the cheaper the entry fee is kind of all aligned, right? Which means the odds of you actually making it out are slim. Granted, that's how they get the bankroll by having a million people put in a buck or whatever it is. But I when I do enter tournaments, it is that balance of okay, I think I could actually be successful with this number of people. And usually that means putting a little more money in to start. But yeah, it's all kind of linked together, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, with tournament size, like usually the larger tournaments, they have bigger cash prizes, but means that they're harder to win. So there's a trade-off. If you're gonna try and win $1 million, you're gonna have to beat a lot of people. And that's fine. that could be your goal. You could go for it that way. But if you're willing to say, I just want a return on investment, I don't care if it's $100 or $1,000, like I want to make money, then playing in a smaller contest means you're competing with fewer people. Similarly, we've already mentioned a little bit the advancement rates. And the point I want to get across here is not all tournaments are created equal. The advancement rates really vary between contests, and you need to ensure that the advancement rules align with your goals. Matt, tell us a little bit about advancement rules and how they might vary from contest, and kind of what types of contests are you looking to enter based on their advancement rules?
Sure. So, like as you sort of mentioned, not all of these contests are created equal. So typically you have some sort of qualifying phase where X number of weeks in, you need to be in the top Y percentage of the people that you drafted against. Going from there, usually you are kind of, as you mentioned, Austin, in these kind of minier sort of contests where during those 1 or 2 weeks, you need to beat like another, we'll just say 6 people. So usually top 2 people advance in at least the leagues that I'm sort of in. And you have to beat people from there. So not only do you have to have your team be good at the beginning of the year, where Jameson Williams would not be very helpful, but then you need to have your lineup be optimized enough that you can win each of those kind of mini sessions. Like it doesn't matter how good you were in the beginning of the year, you need to have a really good team during that week or two. So for me, and all of that, the variety of different leagues have different, as you mentioned, advancement rules, different percentage of people advancing different ways. You have that. I know some you actually do get credit for what you did in the first beginning part of the year, which is nice. Versus some, it's like, nope, that's a brand new contest for you. So for me, I am an avid board gamer. I don't like losing. I like when someone does beat me to have beaten me due to strategy. So one of the things I don't particularly love about not getting credit for having a really good team at the beginning of the year, because this happens in my family leagues all the time, where yep, I'm the number 1 seed every year, and then all it takes is 1 week and you're gone. So for me, I look for the leagues that do sort of let things carry over from the first part of the year, at least up until later on in the playoffs of those things, because at the end you do have to have like a one and done sort of thing. But that's what I kind of look for.
Yeah, I love it. Benny, what do you have to say about advancement rules? What are you looking at when you're looking at advancement rules?
Really, it kind of flattens out after the first round on most sites. So the first one will typically take 2 of the first 12. I'm typically looking for that, because when they only take 1 of the first 12 off of the rip, you're at a pretty big disadvantage. Just one other thing I'd like to circle back to for contest selection quick. Look at the maximum amount of entries that you're allowed to enter on those contests, because they could look intimidating, and that's my one gripe with Underdog. They don't do many single entry, 3 entries. But look at that along with projected overlays, because DraftKings, I love going over there towards the end of summer when they credit my account, because there's supposed to be a huge overlay, and I can enter all of those single entry tournaments right towards the end of summer. But just wanted to get back to that quick.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's definitely something to be looking at, particularly with these tournaments. That's one of the great things about DraftKings, like you mentioned, Benny, is you can do single entry. There's 3 entries. Sometimes they'll do weird amounts like 11 entries, like some like random number. But those contests I particularly like targeting as well, because everybody just gets one shot. And when people have one shot, the field starts to condense on certain players, because that's the only lottery ticket they get, which means it's easier to get different. It's also usually easier to win because of that. And so, with that, I want to turn to just talking through entry fee, because I think sometimes with entry fees, we get a little bit stuck in like, what is the lowest amount? Oh, I don't really want to throw money out on those high stake contests. Like you see a $50 contest or $100 contest go out, and we shy away from it because we want those $25 contests. So, Benny, I want to start with you on this point. Like when you're looking at entry fees, like how are you navigating that?
So it really does go back to the advancement rules with entry fees, because I saw, for example, Underdog, they did that $7 tournament, I think
Yeah,
about a
yeah,
week
yeah.
ago. When you look more into it, it was like 50 max, but a pretty short field for max entry for that. So
Oh, looks like we lost Benny. Well, we're going to come back to get Benny. So Matt, we're going to come to you to talk about some entry fee stuff. Can you, when you're looking at entry fees, what are you looking at?
Sure, that's live podcasting, baby. We fight through it. For me, I'm a volume shooter when it comes to best ball. Like I enjoy the process of team building and drafting different builds, and like that's the fun of it for me. So earnestly, anything higher than $5,
you
I'm already.
know,
Oh, okay. Anything higher than $5, I'm kind of already out in the sense of like when I'm doing this, like I'm doing this so I can have just a veritable heck ton of teams, so that when I'm scrolling through Sunday evenings, right, I like, hey, look who did well and who didn't. So for me, just being fully honest, that's pretty much as far as I get when I start thinking about these entry fees.
Yeah,
Benny, welcome
for
back.
sure. Benny, welcome
internet
back.
issues all day, guys. My bad.
Oh, it's all good. We barely heard your point about entry fees. So just go ahead and tell us how you're thinking of entry fees.
So you really want to look at it with the. I typically look at it with the amount of entrance that each person's allowed to do. You want to. So a smaller entry fee could kind of make a newer best ball player want to join that tournament just because it's cheaper. But when you look at the rules, if it's a smaller tournament that's going to fill in a couple days, and it's say a 50 entry max, like the Underdog tournament they released, I think a week ago, $7. That's
It looks like we lost Benny again. I'm going to keep going with his point, but sometimes those larger entry fee tournaments, they end up having better advancement rules that are more conducive to winning contest. So to illustrate this point, I was looking at the Best Ball Mania advancement rules compared to some more expensive contests like the Chow Chow that ran earlier this summer, the Dalmatian 2 that just ran. And just comparing round one advancement rules for these three contests, Best Ball Mania and the Chow Chow, they were the same. They both took the top 2 out of 12, but the Dalmatian 2 took the top 4 out of 12. So
for
you
the
only
people
had to
that are
beat
going to max enter.
8 people. You only had to beat 8 people to advance in that contest. And when you look at that, it's much easier to beat those 8 people to advance to round 2 and then eventually round 3 than in those other contests. So, like with Best Ball Mania, it's a $25 entry. If you're going to do 2 to 4 contests already, why not try and do one of the higher entry fee contests that have better advancement rates? And then later rounds, like with the Chow Chow, to advance in rounds 2 and 3, you just have to beat 6 people. You have to be the top 2 out of 8. Whereas in Best Ball Mania, you have to be first out of 18, which is just tough. It is
So much
tough to
harder.
win that level of DFS contest and best ball contest. Looks like we got Benny back. Benny, we've been talking through the entry fees. I'm going to give you one shot to talk about the slows versus the fast, because this was a point you brought up earlier about drafting slow drafts versus drafting fast drafts. And this was something that was kind of unique that I hadn't really thought of before. So I wanted to get you to talk about it.
So just going back to what we were saying before about self-scouting, my slow draft rates in tournaments and even sit and goes last year were pretty abysmal. So I kind of narrowed it down to I love the fast draft. I love thinking quickly. And when I am in a slow draft, the moment that notification comes on my phone, I am making that pick like I'm in a fast draft because that is just how my brain works. I can tell myself when I'm entering like 10 puppies in 5 minutes to try and get my entries up that I'm going to really think out every one of my selections here over the next couple weeks. But it does not work out for me. So I'm
So everybody's got a different mindset when they come to it. And
definitely mainly a fast drafter, more so in sit and goes. Oh, I'm back. Sorry.
You're back.
Yeah. So that's just what works for me. Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, the slow drafts work for me because I am meticulous with my spreadsheets. And so I'll like pull up, like I have this spreadsheet right now that has every matchup for the NFL season for every team, and I'll just sit there and I'll look through it and I'll figure out which teams I'm stacking and who I want to play and pair with my team. So, but fast drafts work for other people, works for Benny, doesn't work for me. I get too stressed out. Matt, do you have anything to add on this about entering slows versus fast?
No, I think you nailed it. Just that the people you're drafting against are very different. Like as you said, Benny, when these fast drafts, you can take advantage of the fact that maybe other people haven't thought through as much as you have, and you can maybe things happen differently there than when someone has 8 hours to make an Austin very meticulously planned pick. Which I know I like to noodle things and sit on things, and so the slow drafts typically work for me a little more in success rates, but I completely understand for other people where the fast is where you want to be.
Yeah, I love it. So we're going to pivot now to talking about contest selection when it comes to sit and goes. And this is really where I like to get in the weeds. So I'm going to talk through this a little bit and then we'll go to Matt and Benny on it. The first thing, I just want to get this out there. Like, let's start entering $5 contest on Interdog. Let's forget those $3 contests. We're going to talk more about why in a little bit. Just enter the $5 contest and trust me. But when it comes to selecting these sit and goes, particularly on Underdog, you have 3-team leagues, 4-team leagues, 6 teams. Sometimes there's some 10-team leagues, depending on what the entry fee is, and then 12-teamers. And essentially, I am weighting my contest more towards the smaller fields, more towards those 3-team leagues, because there are better odds of winning those contests, right? If I'm entering a 3-person league, I think that I have a 1 in 3 shot of winning, and I think I am more likely to win that contest than a 12-person league where I have to beat 9 teams to cash. And so I am often just weighting towards those leagues. So as I mentioned last week, I did some MLB best ball drafts on Underdog this year. It's loads of fun. I've been enjoying it. So I entered. Now, I didn't balance my sit and goes in tournaments the way I really ideally would have wanted to here. I entered about $35 of sit and goes and 49 in tournaments. So I had 7 sit and go leagues. The thing where I really balanced here is I had 4 2-person leagues. Right now I'm winning in all 4, which is great, right? So that plan is working accordingly. And then I have 2 6-person leagues. Right now, I'm like fighting for second and first. It's like the top 3 is just really bunched up, but it's looking like I'm likely to cash in that league. And then I have a 12-person league. Also, I'm currently cashing in on that league. And what that's enabling me to do is I am now going to likely break even no matter what, which is great because I've entered 14 tournament leagues and I'm currently advancing in about 4 to 5 of them, depending on the day and the time, which is really nice. But I think with this, I'm more likely to kind of break even. With the NFL so far, I've got 27 sit and goes and 15 tournaments. I like this balance a lot better. And like I mentioned earlier, if I'm able to cash in half of these sit and goes, I will break even if I lose in every single tournament, which, given how meticulous I have been about my tournaments, I'm hoping that that is not the case because I've been trying really hard. But hey, if I lose all the tournaments, those sit and goes should be good insurance for me. Matt, do you have anything to add to this?
No, I think you just laid out a very real world example for the type of stuff we were talking about earlier in terms of planning for your goals, right? Like that's how you do it. And obviously everyone's budget is a little different. So whatever, again, kind of go from the start. Like, what's your goal? What am I trying to accomplish here? And then sort of go in from there. I mean, I'm very impressed with your hit rates there. A 2-team best ball sounds fascinating to me. Uh, but but no, I think you nailed it.
Yeah. And I cannot wait until we get to talk about the strategy behind these small field teams because I just, we overthink these things. And I think there's some easy ways to make mistakes and easy ways to gain advantage, which is why I like the smaller leagues. So we're going to move forward to our last topic before we get into some mailbag questions. We're going to talk about navigating rake. And so first, we just need to know, what is rake, right? We see this pop up on the websites that we're playing best ball on, and sometimes it's hard to know what that even means. So Matt, just tell us what rake is.
Sure, everyone knows the expression, or at least they should, the house always wins, right? And that's kind of what rake is. So all of these best ball places, so DraftKings, Underdog, anything, they are making money off of you no matter what, right? So the if you do the quick math, okay, there's 100 teams, I'll put in $1, but the payouts only add up to $90. That's weird. Where's that other $10 go? That's going to the people that are hosting the site and giving us the opportunity to actually play in it. So if people are into sports gambling, is typically why you see the 50-50 odds set at like minus 110. So you have to bid $110 to win 100. It's just a way for the companies running these things to make money. So yeah. Anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think that you've definitely got it covered there. And I think just for an example, like Best Ball Mania, the thing about that contest that I realized the other day, it is a money maker for Underdog Fantasy, right? They're making about $2 million if that contest fills up. That is a thick payday for Underdog. So just keep in mind, like these sports books, they're making money when you enter contest. But why do we care about it? Like, why do we even care about how much money? Like, okay, we could be like, yeah, the big bad sports books, they're making money, but there's actually more rationale behind that, more than that, to why we care about rake. So, Benny, while we have you, why do we care about rake? Why is it something we should focus on when selecting contest?
As you may have heard, the
House always wins, just like Benny is saying. So, Matt, house always wins, but what does that mean for us whenever we're playing contest?
Well, quite simply, is the amount of money that you can win. Like you're trying to win, you're trying to maximize your profits. Uh, no one is super egregious, really. But there is a world where you enter a $10 contest, right? And expecting I'm going to win $100 if I win this thing. And it's like, oh, maybe you only win like 50. I don't know. Again, that's very egregious, but it matters. It definitely should be an influencing factor in where you are comfortable, like which of these sites you are. Oh, goodbye, cat. Which of these sites you are trying to join, and which contest you're entering.
Yeah, exactly. And this is why I was saying earlier, like, enter $5 leagues on Underdog, don't enter the $3 leagues. And this was just my take. Like, if you love $3 leagues, enter them, do what you love. Like, I'm not going to tell you what to do if you just enjoy something else. But from a rake perspective, it is more beneficial to enter these $5 leagues because when you look at the Underdog site, the rake percentage on $5 sit and go drafts is 10%. Whereas for these $3 leagues, it's up to like 11.1%. And so you're actually giving up a little bit of a margin for extra profit there that if you win the contest, you could potentially achieve. So just keep that in mind. And this also applies to tournaments, right? Some of these larger tournaments, they have higher levels of rake because they're money makers for the websites. And that's why, sometimes those giant money contests that's like $100, it seems scary, they're way lower rake because the website they're banking on, that more people aren't going to be joining those. And that means there's more percentage of the prizes available to the people who are playing. So it's just something to keep in mind. You don't have to get terribly in the weeds with it if it doesn't align with your goals. But if your goal is to make money and your goal is to try and maximize the winnings in any contest, it's something you should pay attention to. So we're going to move towards our mailbag questions. And we had one question sent in. Very timely news. Just yesterday, we got the news that DeAndre Hopkins is now likely signing with the Tennessee Titans. So, Matt, this is a gross signing.
Yes, it is.
How does the DeAndre Hopkins news change how you're drafting him in best ball leagues?
Well, personally, being a Patriots fan, I was kind of hoping it wasn't going to be the Titans and be my team, but that's okay. We'll move past that. We won't hold that against him. So I mean, it definitely impacts it because obviously now there was a bit of a rush when we didn't know where he was going to be. It's kind of like Dalvin Cook right now, where it's like, yeah, he's going to end up somewhere, right? So like that is a fun little lottery ticket. But yeah, that Titans team is fascinating. Obviously, they're probably going to have Tannehill still throwing him the ball. I don't think they're going to go to Malik Davis. Hard to say. But Tannehill he's technically a professional quarterback. And who else really is on that offense that's going to soak up a whole lot of stuff? Obviously, Treylon Burks' value takes a little bit of a hit. I still kind of like him as ADP. he's going to be falling. So one of those buy the dip sort of thing on Traylon Burks, to be honest, right now. There's that tight end that I can never say his name, so I'm not even going to try. But who else is even there, right? So obviously he's going to fall into the wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 range. I still think that offense runs through Derrick Henry until those wheels fall off, which they've yet to fall off. So I think, at least for right now, people are going to be drafting D-Hop a little higher than he's probably worth, just because the name's been in the press and people are going to go after him. So I'm still probably letting other people take him at this point, and more so buying the Traylon Burks dip than anything. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Also, because DeAndre Hopkins, let's be honest, he's getting older in age. He's
Mm-hmm.
the odds of him playing a full 17 game season pretty low. Like he's struggled with injuries over the past couple of years. Obviously, he missed time last year for the suspension, but the year before that, he was on and off the field fairly frequently. So we don't even know if he's going to get 17 full games. Yeah, one of my friends messaged me today and was like, "Are we about to get a repeat of the Julio Jones situation?" Like, I hope not, but he is getting towards that age where we don't know. He could fall off a cliff. And, his injury history is with hamstrings, and hamstring injuries can be really nagging. We've seen that with guys like Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, and particularly Julio Jones, who his hamstring seemed to bother him about every week. So I'm taking the same track as you, Matt. I'm going to let other people, increase D Hop's ADP, and I'm going to take the value with Traylon Burks and Chigga at where it's at.
That's the one. And again, run first offense, right? And even if they do, which I think they're going to at some point this year, switch over to Davis, right? That is even more of a wild card for any of those pass catchers. So it's already kind of baked in with Burks, but D Hop is that name.
Yeah, there you go. Well, that is going to be all for this week. This would be the point of the show where Benny would plug all of his stuff, but he's having some internet issues. So just follow Benny_bestball on Twitter and make sure you catch all of his stuff. Matt, you're at mrecord21 on Twitter. What you got going on right now? Anything you want to plug?
Yes, sir. So a lot of great stuff. Obviously, this podcast, you're already here. Like, subscribe, all that jazz. Doing a lot of really fun stuff over there at IDP, guys, as well. We're running our charity tournament. Sign up for that. We're about to run our IDP Masters tournament. We're doing kicking up some best balls, some free best balls where you can win some cool IDP guys stuff there. So it's free. There's nothing to even get in there. Like, get over there, try some defensive IDP stuff. I swear it's a ton of fun. So yeah, just keep watching me on the socials and you'll be up to date with what I'm doing.
Awesome. I love it. As a reminder, this show streams exclusively on YouTube, so make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, Club Fantasy FFL. And remember, you can find our Week 17 Best Ball Study Guide at clubfantasyffl.com, where I break down all Week 17 matchups and players to target from each of those games. Reminder to send in questions for our mailbag questions. And also, we got a lot going on at Club Fantasy. Dynasty After Party dropped last night. You can catch that in your feeds now. We had our mock draft show this morning. Tomorrow night, we'll have Kelly Singh and Adam Hollis doing Who's Your Caddy, our DFS golf show, which I love that we have a golf show. It's incredible. And then Wednesday night's our flagship show, no pun intended. We're breaking down all 32 teams throughout the summer. We're also releasing articles covering all 32 teams. And today we just released our Jacksonville Jaguars piece covering Falcons fan favorite, Calvin Ridley. Love Calvin Ridley. Free Calvin Ridley. So we'll also give a short burst of every other fantasy relevant player from the Jacksonville Jaguars. But for Matt Record, M Record at M Record 21, Benny Israel at Benny_bestball. This has been Summer School. I'm Austin Amandolia at Austin_FFL. And until next time, remember, defense wins championships, offense wins fantasy football, and best ball wins money. We'll see you next time.
See ya.